so if it's real or fake. Golden Greek told us the giant goon Dickoff, El Toro, the Grunt Brothers too. The wild Samoans got something crazy going. They're gonna be going after you. Wrestling tonight. Everything is bigger than life. Wrestling tonight. Rock and roll and wrestling tonight.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Tonight. It's been a while, and we're back.
It has been too long.
It's been about a half a year.
It has. It's been like 8 months for me.
Yeah. And I know everybody thinks that, you and I are like out partying and jet setting from city to city, wine women's song every night. But we have not even seen each other since the last podcast that we did together in December.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Face to face. Yeah. Because of all the stuff going on in the world. But anyway, joining me as always, the Norvell Austin to my Sputnik Monroe.
I like it.
Brace Beemer.
Yeah. Hitting you with so many rights, you're going to beg me for lefts.
So, Brace, before we get into today's topic, there's a few things that I want to mention. A couple trivia things that I want to see if you can get. But,
Jesus.
But before we get into that, I want to
You got a wrestling
mention.
question?
Oh, my God, that sounded exactly like that drop. That was like exactly like that drop that we used to play.
Oh, yeah.
On the pile driver.
It was.
That was perfect. I just do want to mention the recent passing of a Detroit wrestling legend, but not only Detroit. I mean, it was a big name pretty much everywhere for a long time, and that is the death of Killer Tim Brooks.
Yeah.
So we just want to give our condolences for that. He had just gotten they knew that he was going to go into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, not the WWE Hall of Fame, but
The cauliflower,
the other
the NWA one?
Yeah, one of those. And so they were able to get him in early because they knew that he was having issues.
Oh, good.
So
He was a hell of a performer. You know, we saw him, and he was kind of a little bit older when we first started seeing him.
yeah,
Which is, you see that a lot when we were growing up. You start to see all this wrestling. But he was big around here in the 70s. You know, a lot of people that were Detroit wrestling fans know of Killer Tim Brooks.
right.
And even into the early 80s around here, he was a name. So,
Yeah, I want to say that we probably saw most of his stuff in World Class.
yeah, right.
And then
Dallas, Texas.
And then later on, they brought him into international wrestling
Yeah.
as the brother of Bruiser Brody, Buster Brody, because Abdullah was in there as a babyface champion and Brody was leaving.
Yeah.
So they kind of brought him in just so we saw a little bit of that. But
And that was good that he changed his gimmick. I didn't like it, but, in retrospect, he was Killer Tim Brooks.
yeah.
And he hadn't been up in Montreal for quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
So bringing him in as
I
Buster.
didn't mind it. I mean, I thought it was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the old escaped from the lunatic asylum type
Yeah.
thing. Quite a few years. I mean, that had already been a thing in wrestling, but it was quite a few years before Norman the Lunatic did it in WCW.
Yeah, or Rough House
But it was
Fargo.
kind of the same thing. Right. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was probably more based on Rough House Fargo than anything. But, all right, so just to test your knowledge, and I believe me, you're probably not going to get these, but just
Is that a challenge?
just in case. Well, I mean, we'll see, but it's not. I mean, I'm not a big date guy as far as wrestling goes.
Me neither.
I don't think you are either. But on this date in 1996, I'll even give you this: at the WCW Bash at the Beach pay-per-view, what significant event took place?
96 Bash at the Beach. Oh, jeez. Was that Hogan turning bad?
You got it.
Huh.
Hulk Hogan joining the NWO.
Because I knew it was a Bash at the Beach, and I was,
Yeah.
But you get the years so screwed up
Right.
between, those 4 or 5 years there.
Yeah, exactly. Good job.
Thanks.
And also on this date in 1990 at the Great American Bash pay-per-view, what significant event took place?
1990 Great American Bash. Oh, boy.
The clock is ticking.
1990 Great American Bash. Was that when Flair returned and beat Vader?
No, but that was actually the WCW debut of Vader, I believe.
Okay.
But
all right, I give. I would only be guessing, you know.
Sting, that was actually Sting's first world title win over Flair.
Was it?
It was on this date.
I thought Sting, but I couldn't
were
place him with anything special.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, as everyone knows, well, I mean, a lot of people might not know this, but Sting was obviously destined or supposed to win the title before that, but he had jumped up on the cage in that cage match and
with Funk
screwed
and
his
Muda and all those guys.
I think that cage match was it them? I don't know if Funk was in it or not. It was like Muda, Buzz Sawyer, I think,
and
the
right.
Dragon Master.
And he tried to climb up, and
I think I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly what, but
you're probably right.
Either way, he like shattered his knee and then he rehabbed it, and then finally that was the result. Sting finally beats Flair in 1990 at the Great American Bash for his first world title.
I defer to Mad Dog Butch for everything 90s in wrestling.
I'm not. Maybe up to a certain point, but Monday Night Wars. Then it just got all confused.
Oh yeah.
But so today's topic is the top wrestling feuds. We've each compiled a top 10 list. Again, I don't know how you did it. I didn't give you really any instruction or anything because either way how you want to do it. But I always do mine as my favorite feuds. I will say this, that there are some top feuds that I didn't get a chance to see a whole lot of till later.
Yeah, right.
So I didn't include those in my list. I only included the ones that were going on when I was a wrestling fan. Like I said, however you want to do it.
I did
fine.
favorites too, except my favorite, it was spelled with a U like Canada A. and then I have a couple that I discovered afterwards.
Okay. All right.
But most of them are, time frame specific.
Okay.
When I saw them.
All right. Well, I will start off with my number 10, and the reason why I put this on there on my list is because to me it was reminiscent of a feud that ranks a lot higher to me that happened quite a few years before that, and it is Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka. Because
I didn't even think about that one.
These guys, just every time these guys would have a match, and for a while they're the only ones that wrestled each other in ECW. Like, for a long time they were married to each other. It was almost like an attraction to have these guys wrestle each other. And then later on, Mike Awesome went on to win the title, and I think Tanaka might have beat him for that. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he did. I think you're right.
For a short time.
Yeah.
But yeah, these guys just had great matches. I remember the very first one that I saw, and I don't remember which event that it was. It was one of the big. I think it was before they were actually on pay-per-view, but however they did their big events that time. And I remember seeing the match, and I don't remember who. I think it was Tanaka actually reversed it and gave Awesome the power bomb outside of the ring over and he didn't quite get him, and Awesome just went right down.
When he threw him over the rope, down into a
because that's what Awesome used to do to Tanaka all the time. But in this particular match, Awesome went to do it and he reversed it, and then Tanaka did it to Awesome, and he just boom, dropped him right through the table, it looked like right on his head. But anyway,
those guys were crazy, weren't they? Like all those chair shots.
Oh yeah,
holy smoke!
Yeah, Tanaka used to just take those unprotected chair shots right in the head.
Yeah, and if anybody saw the Mick Foley or Mankind and Rock match where they had all those chair shots
when he was handcuffed, wasn't he? Yeah,
that pales in comparison to what the
Yeah.
Mike Awesome and Tanaka were doing.
But the matches were good too. I mean, you know, they didn't necessarily need to do all that stuff.
Yeah, right. And that's
they
what
still could have
always
had
pissed me off
good
about
match.
those
But
guys.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, it was just the state of ECW at that
Sure.
at that time.
Yeah.
They had kind of gotten away from it. Just everything needed to be quote hardcore at that time. But anyway, any thoughts on that besides what you've already said?
That was one of the the feuds, like bigger feuds that lasted like on the indie scene. I'll call ECW like the indie scene for a couple years. And then it came from Japan as well. So, I mean, that thing probably went like 5 years, didn't it? 4 or 5 years, like overall.
Yeah. And then
between ECW and overseas and wherever else. Didn't they do a match in like WCW too?
Not in WCW, but when they did I don't think so, but when they did the ECW one night stands in WWE, they had
that's probably what I'm thinking.
They brought him back for that, and I'm assuming that I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember if their feud started in FMW. I'm guessing it did because Mike Awesome was.
I think it did. I think it came from there.
I'm pretty sure that's why they even brought him over.
Huh.
So
cool.
Anyway, what is your number 10 feud of all time?
Before I get to number 10, I don't know if anybody can see at home, but we have this little spittle block between us, which is pretty sweet. It's well machined. I just wanted to bring that up.
I don't know if they can see. Well, yeah, and that one shot they can see.
I want to say you sank my battleship, but Anyway, number 10. This is one of those that I saw afterwards because I only saw like the very end, or it was only mentioned when we started watching this. The Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond, against Ronnie and Jimmy Garvin. Ron Garvin, one of your favorites.
Yes.
And Precious managed Jimmy and Ronnie Garvin.
Mm-hmm.
This was, I think I've seen 3 or 4 matches from this, and they didn't have a whole lot. I mean, they ran their territory with it. It was like a 3-month feud, maybe.
Okay.
Fantastic. I almost had this higher, but I just almost couldn't because this was from International Wrestling in Montreal. You've heard us talk about this group over and over again. And they had the matches, and the way the matches were set up, like the first match that you saw on TV was the Rougeaus, the hometown heroes. They were big in Montreal. They were almost
they were
like
huge.
Yeah, their dad was like a Hulk Hogan of Montreal, and then the sons came along. It was almost like the Von Erich deal in Texas,
or the Hearts of Calgary.
Yeah, same deal. Or the Armstrongs down south.
Right.
But these guys were over. They were big, and then they just got their butt handed to them by the Garvins. Just one of the best beatdowns, one of the most well-worked matches that I've seen, like starting a feud off. It was great. They sold out the Montreal Forum, and that's a big building. That's like 20,000.
Yeah.
Because they use that for hockey in Montreal. Yeah. The old Forum, it isn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Going down to the last match, that was great. I mean, there was like a near riot in that first match. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Did you see the? You saw those,
I've seen. I don't know if I've seen them all, but I know that I've seen some because I have a video. I at least have a video that they put out. Was it Jurassic Promotions?
Yeah. So you probably got the blow off from the Forum.
I think so.
One. Yeah.
Yeah. So the final match.
Well worth. I mean, if you watch them in order, like I got goosebumps watching the first one. It was so good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it. I mean, I did like what I saw. It was there blood in the blow off? I don't
think so.
Okay.
Not that I remember in the blow off, but there was before that.
Okay. So at the time when we started watching International, obviously they had or right around this time, and then even when we watched it, they had a working relationship with the NWA.
Yeah.
Because the Road Warriors came in there later.
Yeah, a lot of guys
or maybe
did.
Around that same time. And then after that, then they kind of had a working relationship with
Road Warriors were in there from AWA. Wasn't that?
Are you sure? No, I think they were already in NWA at that point.
Yeah, it might have been.
But then after that, then they worked with Puerto Rico, and that's how they got Brody and Abdullah and all those.
Hercules Ayala.
Yeah.
Jason
and
Terrible.
David Schultz, too. Dr. D.
Yeah.
That was like one of his last hurrahs. But, yeah, if anybody wants to check it out, definitely check out some international wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, as a promotion, it's really a little-known promotion here. Yeah. I mean, no one ever really talks about it, but there was just some fantastic stuff in there, and guys started out in there. I believe Vampiro started out in there. Yeah. Rikishi started out in there. Toshiaki Kawada started out, or at least when he was first starting out.
Yeah.
Went through there. There's so many guys that came through there.
Yeah, a lot
starting out.
LaFon, Ron Ritchie.
Right.
I mean, just a lot of them wound up in Japan too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of them
great territory. Sheik Ali, I don't know if he ever went anywhere, but he was.
I just looked him up recently, and he didn't. He didn't go anywhere else.
6'5", had the best drop kick. He might have had the best drop kick, standing drop kick that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
probably better than Kerry Von Erichs, which is hard to do.
Yeah, I watched a match with him and Martel, and it was fantastic. Yeah. And because that's why I looked him up, because I was thinking, how did this guy not go on to do something else?
Yeah.
Because he was a good worker and
he was great,
big, intimidating looking dude.
Yeah,
and I mean they could have done something with him. I mean. Looks wise, he didn't really look like anything spectacular. I mean, he didn't look like anything unique. Nothing really stood out about him.
Yeah.
But
he was a big SOB.
But they could have done something with him.
Oh yeah.
They could have changed his gimmick up.
Yeah, maybe he got out of it because that always even at the time it was like, man.
Yeah.
He's not long for this international world. And turns out,
Yeah, and he was getting a big push in there too.
I think he wound up. He may have wound up going to Japan, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, he might have, but he wasn't. After what we saw, from what I read, he wasn't around much long.
Yeah. Okay.
Long after that. All right. So my number 9, and again, I didn't get a chance to see a whole lot of the initial matches between these guys, but then later on, they had just amazing matches. Just one of the most classic series of matches, and I'll just say it's Steamboat and Ric Flair.
Oh yeah,
Ricky Steamboat.
They did make my list too.
Okay, so yeah, the Flair was tough because there were so many different. I had Flair versus a bunch of different guys, but I had to put this at least at my number 9, and Steamboat is another guy, and I think I've mentioned this before. And I think because his career ended before, let's say, we got into the Monday Night War era, even though he came back later and still looked great.
Way later.
But way later. But he still looked fantastic. But I think because of that, he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves.
Yeah.
From more of the modern fans. But specifically in WCW, when they bring Steamboat in, they have the little feud with Flair. Basically, it's Ric Flair, the partying womanizer, against Ricky Steamboat, the family man with the kid, and he brought his kid, and although that didn't work, they thought that was going to be over, but the fans still cheered for
I don't
Flair.
think they thought that was going to be over. That's just what he wanted to do, so they let him do it.
I mean, not that Ricky wasn't over. I mean, I think those matches were just over with people.
No, him bringing it, as sad as it is, him bringing his wife and everything down to the ringside with him kind of killed it.
Yeah.
So especially for the females in attendance, they don't want to, they go to see a guy wrestle and they got posters of him and everything. They don't want to see him bringing his wife out. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that goes against at the time. I mean, they were kind of getting away from it at that point, but that kind of goes against the whole babyface. Persona.
Yeah. And it was fine, but I remember seeing it and just going, gosh, come on.
Yeah. But
let's get down to business.
Besides all that, the matches themselves were just great.
Yeah, phenomenal.
So I can't remember how it went. I think Steamboat beats Flair. Then they have another one that's a draw. Then they have the other one that Flair wins the title back, which leads to the Funk Flair feud and Flair turning into a babyface. But either way, and then Steamboat just kind of went. I mean, he was still upper mid card.
Yeah.
But I think they gave him the TV title and the tag team championships and stuff like that.
But he was still in good feuds though. I mean, I don't think they really pushed him down. He was tag team champ. He did the whole thing with Dustin Rhodes against. Oh yeah. Was it Austin and Pillman?
Oh no, that's what I mean. I mean, he was always upper mid card. Yeah. But he never really got back in the title picture.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so right after that, he feuded with Luger for the U.S. title.
Right. Yeah.
And then after that, he kind of dropped down, and then he got injured in a match with Stunning Steve Austin, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then pretty much his career was over. Besides that feud that he had with Jericho years.
Yeah, and I think
later.
that's when George Scott came back and helped with the booking.
I think it was
Because
that was
when
right
he went to
around the time.
WWF, he took Steamboat. He took a bunch of those Mid-Atlantic people. People
Yeah.
kind of forget about that.
Right. This guy right here too.
Yeah.
He brought him in.
The Iron
He
Sheik.
brought him in, not realizing that he couldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because he was like too beat up.
Yeah.
And so like they were initially going to try to give him a push, and then the very first pay-per-view, he wrestles Sting and pretty much gets squashed in a few minutes.
Well, that's a sweet Iron
but-
Sheik shirt.
Yeah, thank you.
And he almost made my top 10 list against Slaughter.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that one.
The boot camp match and all that. Yeah, he's on my honorable mentions. He was holding on to number 10, him and Slaughter, for a while.
All right, let's. So what is your number 9?
My number 9 is Bullet Bob Armstrong against the Flame, a.k.a. Assassin number 1, Jody Hamilton.
Okay.
You notice how whenever anybody says Assassin number 1, they have to say Jody Hamilton right after it?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is one of those that I more got into later.
Okay.
Because when it first started coming on TV around our parts, there was some of it there, but not. And this was in CWF, Continental Wrestling Federation. And these guys feuded as Bob Armstrong versus the Assassin in the 70s.
Okay.
As well. And then they had the loser leave town like they do, and then he comes back, when he comes back, he's the Flame, a different person, and that just stuck.
Okay.
That was like 85, 86 era, that I saw this stuff in. Great blood. If you get a chance, go out on the internet, on YouTube, and look at the Flame interview, threatens to kill Bob Armstrong.
I have seen that.
Oh man, it was great.
Yeah, that was a great interview.
And
as far as the matches go, though, I can't remember if I ever saw any of their actual matches or not.
they were just like blood brawls.
Okay.
And
All right.
they were, I mean, this was like Southern wrestling at its, maybe not at its finest, but it's Bullet Bob Armstrong,
Yeah.
and it's Jody Hamilton.
Right.
And just the interviews and the heat. I mean, it's on mine just because of the heat, really.
Okay.
Because they just don't do the heat, Heat meaning getting the fans all ticked off.
Right.
Now it's all a comedy, a joke. Can we send them home with a half grin on their face and they're happy?
Yeah, exactly.
So number 9, Bob the Bullet Armstrong, who just retired from wrestling a couple months ago, and his wife just passed. So condolences to the Armstrong family.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, really? I didn't realize that he had just retired.
Yeah, his last
Okay.
match was it was just before everything got shut down.
Okay.
Within a few months of that. Yeah, he was wrestled until he was 81. And he
Wow.
wrestled almost every weekend. Kind of
Yeah.
like Lawler,
Yeah. And Lawler is still wrestling in Memphis.
And he looks good.
Yeah, no, he looks
Like
pretty much looks exactly
he
the
made
same.
Dusty Rhodes look, passable in that little feud they had, and
Yeah.
in like 2013, 14,
Right.
10 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so number 9, Bullet Bob Armstrong against the Flame.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with that to even comment on it. But
But the guys though.
I do know that, and I did see that interview, and I may have seen the matches. If I did, I don't remember. But nothing sticks out in my head right now if I had seen it. But that's another promotion that if people aren't familiar with, check it out. I mean, there was so many different eras of Continental. There was different bookers. Eddie Gilbert and Paul Heyman even booked it at one point. That's like when I watched it. I think I had seen a little bit of it before that, but Pro Wrestling This Week used to feature it a lot.
Yeah.
So we'd see a lot of it on there, and then it actually started airing in our area, like during the Gilbert Heyman era. So yeah, definitely check it out. Either way, every era is good in its own way.
Yeah, and go back to Southeastern wrestling before it turned
and
into
that
Continental.
too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the best for my money anyway.
Yeah. All right, my number 8 is one of, I'll just say it's Heart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs. So when I first started watching wrestling, I was like a huge British Bulldogs fan. The the Hart Foundation I didn't see until after, but then they kind of became my favorites. But I still like the Bulldogs. At that time, as far as WWF went, as far as I was concerned, they were having the best matches on the cards.
Probably, yeah.
Or the TV shows or whatever, primetime wrestling, they'd show them quite a bit,
Yeah.
Against each other, and that's how I saw them. But they were doing stuff that nobody else was doing at the time. It was still like a different style than like the tag team wrestling and say NWA or anything like that. But as far as WWF went, it was just the stuff they were doing was just so far ahead of like what everybody else was doing in there. Everybody else was
style.
Yeah, right. Which I mean, just if you're familiar with their careers, they came up through the different areas, and they were all, besides Anvil, they were all kind of smaller guys, so they had to work more of that style to make their way. Although, at that time, even though they were shorter, the Bulldogs were so jacked up at that point. I mean, it was crazy. But either way, they just did a ton of the tag team moves that that were more like innovative. Both teams, but more so the Bulldogs, I would say in the beginning. But anyway, so that is my number 8. Your thoughts on that feud?
You know what? I mean, two of the best tag teams, especially, for my money, the Bulldogs. Well, even the Hearts. Just two great like tag teams going at it. And I wish that the only thing I wish is that would have been in like one of the NWA territories, so you could have got some real heat with that,
Right.
Because it was more just great wrestling exhibitions.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how else to word it, but they had, their style was different. It was, for a different audience compared to the clod hopping WWF style,
Right.
It was like, oh man, it's great that this stuff's on. Look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for, and I don't remember, I think maybe at that period I was maybe just watching WWF. So those matches were just, so far more like advanced what everybody else was doing. Because let's face it, a lot of guys, let's take like Junkyard Dog, for example, going from Mid-South, changes his style up in WWF.
Yeah, well, he had to. He got too big.
Right.
So,
I mean, it almost looks like they're taking it easy. A lot of those guys were taking it easy. These guys were working their butts off to, just to make it.
Yeah, Dynamite Kid paid for it, didn't he?
He did. He definitely did. But
great matches. I like a little heat sprinkled onto my
right, and that's why I mentioned that it was different than what the NWA was doing as far as their tag teams, feuds or Mid-South or whatever. But still, it was just like you said, it was almost just like a wrestling clinic being put on.
Yeah, they were sweet. Both of those teams were phenomenal. I know I've used that word twice, so I'm gonna come up with different ones.
I didn't notice.
Passing it out like Halloween candy.
So what would be your number? Or where are you at?
Number 8.
Okay.
The Fabulous Freebirds versus the Von Erichs. This happened mostly in World Class Championship Wrestling, Dallas, Texas. We talked about them earlier. Mm-hmm. And Mid-South Wrestling had a few of their matches because they kind of had a little partnership deal. Mm-hmm. That was 82, and that lasted till 86. Not counting like the Blackbirds and any of the other offshoots.
Right.
Or,
yeah.
Buddy and Terry turning on Michael. Mm-hmm. None of that. And then one of my favorite matches of all time is a 6-man match. It's out there on YouTube. There are like 2 different versions of it. The quality is not very great, but it doesn't matter. It was in 1983 at the Carroll County Convention Center in Texas. And that place was like 12,000 people just packed in there going nuts. And it was like a good match. They just beat the tar out of each other, because those rings were so hard.
Yeah.
But they did a good job, man.
So that's almost to contrast the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Hart Foundation feud.
A different style.
This is almost all heat.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot of technical wrestling.
Right.
And but yeah, I put this as an honorable mention just because I saw more of it later. But yeah, definitely. I mean, if you talk about feuds and anybody knows what they're talking about as far as wrestling goes, this has to get mentioned one way or the other. I don't have it in my top 10, but it would have been 11 or 12.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, just the heat that it generated. I mean, you could get heat on the Von Erichs easily, no matter what.
Yeah.
But this took it to just a whole nother level.
I know.
And this really made the Freebirds for the rest of their careers.
Yeah. I mean, they had a huge name from Georgia coming in.
Yeah.
But they were able to live off of this feud for Jesus. I mean, the rest of their career.
Yeah.
And just like the matches that they had, if you'll take, one of the Von Erichs and put him in just a regular match against some mid-card guy, you might, except for David Von Erich, you just might look at him and go, well, how can those three together against the Freebirds be anything good? Mm-hmm. But it was like magic.
Yeah.
When they clashed, I mean, they had like the whipping matches. They got Fritz out of retirement.
Right.
Beat the crap out of each other. And it wasn't just, look at them beating each other up, how kind of the fans are. It was like it was just laid out like perfect. And they didn't plan it all in the back. They just had a general idea. But everything like that, Feud built, and they made a ton of money off it. It was great.
Yeah. And the crowds just
went awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody says. It was just a totally different crowd reaction than what you get. I mean, the crowds can get into stuff now, but it's not
even close.
Nothing compares to
the crowd would
stuff
cry
like back then.
They would cry when their hero got carted out on a stretcher.
Yeah,
not everybody, but you had some in the crowd that would.
Exactly. Right.
So that was my number 8.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely agree that belongs
in somebody's top 10.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was right there. If I would have seen it when it was going on, I'm sure it would have made it. And you know how I feel about the Von Erichs. But which, if anybody doesn't know, I don't feel good about them. But I even have to give them credit.
Oh, yeah.
For that.
Heck yeah.
That and, well, I don't want to say anything because you might have the other.
I don't. It's in my honorable mention. I was just going to bring it up.
Okay, the dynamic duo? Right. Chris Adams.
You're going. That's why I didn't say it. I thought it might be on your list.
No, I think I have Adams and Kevin on as honorable mentions, but yeah, even the dynamic duo and the Von Erichs.
Yeah, they did some great stuff.
They did. Okay, so my number 7 is, and if you really think about it, this feud didn't really last all that long. Although it got reignited again years later again. But it is, and one of the reasons why I started watching wrestling in the beginning, number 7, Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
So there was, there was heat, more so probably as far as WWF goes, of the type of heat that you're talking about as far as this feud goes.
Yeah.
Because Piper was just such an awesome bad guy.
Yeah, he was great.
I mean, not to give Piper all the credit. I mean, Hogan was just extremely over and as well, and but so the story goes that Piper did not want to lose to Hogan, and I can't really blame him. And who knows if that's what it kind of sounds like that's what the plan is. Otherwise, I think this feud would have gone on longer. But Piper was like, he kind of figured that would kill him off right off the bat. And he's probably right. But this got, but still, I mean, for the matches that they did have, I mean, you had the war to settle the score.
Yeah, that was big. That was big time.
Right. They kind of set the tone. You had WrestleMania 1. Lead up to that and everything, and then after that, their feud kind of tapered off.
Yeah, and even the one with the Mr. T and Piper boxing.
Yeah,
was that which one?
That was WrestleMania 2.
Okay, and that was still like an offshoot. That was still part of that.
That
feud,
was still an offshoot. But so was the Snuka Piper feud in between that? Then
no, it was before it.
Was that before that?
Yeah.
Man, it seems like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Piper had been in there already doing all of the
Okay.
crap on Piper's pit.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
all of that before WrestleMania.
Okay.
And it
Yeah,
wasn't
it's hard
long,
to-
but
the
you know,
timelines
you're
get-
watching it every single week.
Yeah.
And
the
then
timelines
getting all these
get
pits.
jumbled up. But, and like I said, so then they continue it years later, 95, 96, whenever when Hogan turns heel in WCW, and they continue it. Piper gets a couple clean victories over Hogan, but doesn't get the title for whatever reason. But
That's
so
definitely.
they did continue it later on, and you know it still had some nostalgic heat.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it had more than nostalgic heat. I mean, people got into that, you know.
Yeah, it did. I mean, yeah, I mean they did get into that, and I think people were just happy that Piper got clean victories over Hulk.
Yeah, with the sleeper hold.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, definitely that feud deserves to be on a list. It didn't make mine,
Okay.
but I mean, I really didn't. I didn't think of that one, honestly.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean,
Honestly, when
You could have.
once I looked at my list, I was kind of surprised at what I did actually pick when everything was said and done.
yeah, me too.
Because I was kind of thinking about stuff that, you know, after you watched it for so long, and all the different promotions and everything, you didn't really pop for stuff. You didn't really get excited about stuff too much. But you know, that's kind of how I compiled my list.
And that was huge.
stuff that I could still look forward to, you know, when it was on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was mine. What is your number 7?
Number 7 is your number 9, the Flair and Steamboat.
Okay.
Yeah, same deal. Mid-Atlantic, Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW. They had all those matches in the 70s that, you know, there's no tape of. I have a couple like chunks of matches from them in the 70s, but you know, I mean those two could probably go out in with a couple months even at their age.
Oh yeah.
And it
I have no
gives something at
doubt.
least entertaining.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
They could still do that. Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. That was my number 7. Like those best of 3 title changes in '89 were, I mean, just so
Yeah.
long after they had already quote had their feud
Yeah.
peak, and then there it was again. You know?
Yeah. And I will say this: Flair has gone on record to say that Steamboat is the best opponent that he's ever had,
Yeah.
and that those are the best matches that he ever had against
Yeah.
Rick.
A lot of people say that about Steamboat,
Yeah.
you know, and Flair
Right.
too, for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, and people would ask they would ask Rick who the greatest of all time was, and he would say Steamboat. It would be Steamboat if Steamboat ever were teal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So it's still Flair, according to Flair. But yeah, so a lot of wrestlers, a lot of fans agree that Steamboat should be up there.
And one good thing about those that best of 3, if you will, in 1989 time frame in WCW was those matches were all like kind of different,
Yeah, they were.
but still
They weren't doing the
presented
same
as
stuff.
like old school wrestling matches, you know?
Yeah.
That's probably the last like big, huge, you know, like national wrestling feud,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I mean, those
That were wrestling
right.
centered
Yeah.
on the matches. Mostly.
I mean, not. Yeah. They just made such a big deal about those matches, and I mean, they lived up to it though.
Yeah,
They lived up to the hype.
yeah.
That they,
And I remember
They
thinking
built
of
up
that,
on it.
like when going into that, I'm like, well, Steamboat hasn't been around in a couple years.
Yeah.
People in the southeastern, you know, in the Midwest really haven't seen Steamboat in a while, so we'll see what happens.
right.
You know,
Yeah. Yep.
good stuff.
So, kind of an offshoot of that, that I mentioned earlier, my number 6, your number 7 leads into my number 6, which is Ric Flair versus Terry Funk.
Nice.
And another one that was shorter lived than I think that they originally wanted. There's different rumors why. I kind of, and those rumors have kind of got, well, I don't want to say quashed but I just think bygones are bygones now because so much time has passed. But it kind of sounded like Flair Flair's ego got in the way a little bit because a lot of people said that when Flair was off, because, well, the beginning of the feud, like we said, at the end of the last Flair Steamboat match, Funk is there as one of the not referees, judges, right?
In case it goes to a draw, then you have a panel of judges to decide the winner.
So Funk goes in after the match, challenges Flair to a match. Flair blows him off. Funk says he's just kidding. Then Funk attacks Flair, pile drives him on a table. So Flair's gone for a little while, and Funk is cutting all these promos. So one of the rumors is that Flair got upset because of some of the stuff that Funk was saying. Particularly one of them where he kept calling him banana nose and horse tooth and a couple other things. And then another part of it is somebody got upset because they did the angle where so Flair must have been back at this. Oh, and then didn't Funk break his arm during that period too or something? So still during the build-up, Funk comes in and wraps the plastic bag around Flair's head, chokes him with the plastic bag.
That was great. I can't believe
somebody
they
gets
did.
upset. So WCW, I'm assuming the powers that be, got upset about that. So, I mean, who knows? The rumor is that the feud got cut shorter than it was originally intended to be. But either way, the build-up, every little thing that they did in that, I loved Funk's interviews. It was kind of cool to see Flair be the babyface in there, and the matches were good too.
Yeah.
The match that gets all the credit, though, is the I Quit match, and the other match that they had before that where Muta got involved. I think it might have been a Great American Bash. I don't know. But Muta and Sting and all those guys get involved. I think that match was better than the blow-off. But anyway, that's my number 6.
You know, the one of the best, I think what I like best about that feud was that Funk, I mean, he told it like it was real. I mean, he was middle-aged. He was coming back. He wanted back in the limelight, and they just made an angle out of it.
Right.
And it just came across so real at first. At first, I'm watching it thinking, okay, he's acting a little too crazy. It was a little too much over the top, but it's Terry Funk, right?
Yeah.
But man, after a couple interviews, you're just yeah, I'm into it now.
Yeah.
And it did stink that they cut it short.
Yeah.
It seemed like that could have been a feud that went on, and there are all different types of reasons why it got cut short. But
yeah,
probably the bag over the head and having two older looking guys really didn't
right.
Sit well with what they were trying to do there. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was part of the deal too that I forgot to mention. So Funk comes in, Flair, the whole thing is Flair's not going to give him a title shot because he's not part of the top 10.
Yeah.
So Funk has to go through all these other guys to get his place in the top 10. So I was really only familiar with Funk from his WWF run, which I didn't appreciate him in there at all in that time. I didn't get it. I wasn't. I mean, I know that he had been a former NWA champion, but I just didn't get why they're giving this guy, a decent push.
A good one. He had the dog. He had
yeah.
So
when he's in WCW, he had shed a bunch of weight. He was in great shape. He was doing a bunch of stuff, wrestling stuff that I hadn't seen him do. I mean, he was doing sunset flips off the top rope.
Yeah.
And then he was winning with the running pile driver, which in WWF he was winning with the sleeper, which at that time was a boring hold.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I mean, so many other people had used it up until that point.
Well, he couldn't do the pile driver. They probably was Orndorff in there at the time.
Yeah, Orndorff was in it, so that's why he didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, wow. I instantly became a Terry Funk fan, when he came in there and did that.
Yeah, he was awesome. And he's him flying, he's one of the best that I've seen out of anybody. There's a handful that can just go out of, get thrown out, get punched out, get knocked out of the ring in so many different ways.
Oh yeah.
I'll watch match. Jerry Lawler's another one. And I'll see Funk against wrestler A. And then he'll get boomed and flip out of the ring. You're like, how the hell did he do that?
Yeah.
You try and rewind it, which is tough with how they have it nowadays. And you got to try and slow motion it and stop it just to see how he do it, man. He was great.
Yeah, I will say this: going back and watching his stuff in WWF, I can appreciate it. And he was doing that stuff. He was still going out of the ring, but I was just like, why are they giving this old guy this push?
And then Dory Funk comes in, who looks
who's even older.
Yeah, and you're just seeing all the chiseled bodies and the different look, and then here are these guys from the 70s there.
Yeah, so it didn't make sense to me at that time, but I had just started watching it at that point too. But okay, so what do you have for your number 6?
Number 6, Tracy Smothers versus Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony.
Nice.
Yeah, and this was in. These are a couple of the Southern guys that a lot of people up here haven't seen.
Well, they're probably more familiar with Tony Anthony as T.L. Hopper.
I don't even know if he was around long enough for that, was he? Was he like a year maybe?
As T.L. Hopper?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was that long.
But this was these guys are just.
Oh, and sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem.
And Smothers was Freddie Joe Floyd.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, he had a little bigger name in there than T.L. Hopper.
Yeah, he did.
He got
a couple decent victories right off the bat. And
then, well, wasn't he part with one of the Armstrongs for
that was in WCW.
Yeah. Okay. Tracy Smothers, Dirty White Boy, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and you can find this stuff on the internet too. I was like to get people to go out and look at some of this old stuff,
Right.
And that was 93 to 95, but they did. I mean, they had blood, and it was weird when I was putting my list together. I really didn't think of blood that much,
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got it, and it was in the back of my mind, and I got it. I'm like, man, these guys bled well. They did the thing where they burned the rebel flag. Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony, Southern guy, says he moves to New York, starts wearing a Yankees hat. He's got his manager Ron Wright, who I've never seen. You only hear about. Ron Wright was absolutely awesome.
I totally forgot that Ron Wright was part of that.
One of the best men on the stick in the history of the business.
So true. And so that was that whole deal where Ron Wright was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. So, Tracy Smothers' deal was he was a Southern boy. He had the Confederate flag, and Dirty White Boy moves to New York. And all of a sudden he's a Yankee now. He's not a dumb, hillbilly or whatever he was calling him. Mm-hmm. So eventually Tracy Smothers gets knocked out. He's bleeding all over the place. Dirty White Boy burns the rebel flag, and the crowd is pissed. And then they're off. There they go. Yeah. And they had a feud for probably, off and on there for a couple years. They wound up tagging together after that. But yeah, it was just classic old school feud. Good pro wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And both of those guys were great.
That's another promotion that if people aren't familiar with, check out Smoky Mountain, because that was one of the last holdouts.
Yeah.
As far as old school wrestling goes. They were still trying to keep that tradition alive. I mean, they did it for as long as they could.
Yeah.
When you first mentioned that, so let me ask you this before I get into this. You don't have any other Tony Anthony matches, feuds on there, do you?
No.
Okay.
But I was thinking of a couple.
Okay, because when you first said that, I wasn't thinking about even though you said Smothers, I was thinking about the angle from Continental.
Oh, yeah.
But that was actually Tom Pritchard.
Yeah.
But when you first said that, I was thinking, oh, okay. So that is a huge angle at the time. Again, if people aren't familiar with Tony Anthony, check out that angle too, with Dirty White Girl and Tom Pritchard.
Yeah.
From Continental. That was she comes out. Just a quick recap. She comes out with a black eye, is asking Tom Pritchard to to kind of help her out.
Yeah.
And that was all a setup. Dirty White Boy comes out, beats him up, whatever. But
so he acted like Dirty White Boy was beating up his girlfriend.
And Tom Pritchard was going to be the white knight to save her. And I mean, even at that time, with all the stuff going on in those promotions, that would not be. I mean, even today would be shocking.
Yeah.
But even watching it then, I was kind of holy crap. That was still a little bit out there.
Yeah, it was heat though, because they'd done that before.
Heat.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And both of those guys, two of the best punches in wrestling.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
especially Dirty White Boy. His were better than Smothers, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
he was
But
good too.
you know, just two guys, two longtime wrestlers that don't get the credit they deserve.
Yeah.
You know, I to me Smothers was probably better, but yeah, just you know, I mean, he did have kind of his, you know, he was part of the FBI and ECW
Yeah.
and everything, but
Yeah, he had a nice long career, you know.
yeah. And the rumor is he's like one of the legit tough guys out there.
Yeah, he could really trained by Tojo Yamamoto there in Memphis.
Yeah.
Or Nashville, really, but
Right.
yeah, really legit tough guy.
Yeah. All right, my number 5, and I had to put this on here because I'm sorry, the beginning of this angle was exciting. They killed it off quick, but it's the NWO versus WCW. And the early days of it was must-watch wrestling.
It was the last legit heat you're going to see in wrestling.
Pretty much. I mean, so you got two guys coming in from WWF, pretending like they are still working for WWF, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And then eventually they add Hogan to the mix, like we talked about in the beginning. And then it was just boom. I mean, it was already there, but then when you add Hogan,
Yeah, that pushed
and
it
you
over
turn
the top.
Hogan heel, then it's just crazy. I mean, and if you think back to that time, well, okay, I remember you and I talking on the phone, and I think you were like saying, I think you're the one that told me, you're like, hey, WCW is going to try to compete with a live show head to head against Monday Night Raw, and we were both like, oh, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
WCW was a mess up until that point. They were going from, head guy to head guy. I mean,
Yeah, it was
so,
musical chairs. No continuity at all.
right, exactly. And, just no vision, no long-term vision. It seemed
Corporate
like people
or
leaving-
government.
Right. Well, yeah. So, yeah, ultimately that's what was causing all the issues. But either way, I remember thinking, oh, well, that might last 2 months, and then WWE's just going to crush them. Took a lot longer than that. But
Yeah, it did. 83 weeks, right?
something like that. Yeah, exactly. But so I was working, I want to say I was working afternoon shift at the time. So they would show the replays at like midnight.
Yeah.
So I would like hurry home. I'd grab something to eat on the way home. I'd hurry home to watch the replays of those shows. And it was just, for the time. I mean, NWO shirts. Where else did you like? I mean, everybody had NWO shirts.
Yeah.
Up until that point, you really didn't see wrestling shirts at like regular stores.
Yeah, really not many.
Yeah.
That's
just that whole era. I mean, the original NWO angle was great, but again, no long-term plan.
Right.
They just thought that they were going to be able to ride that horse all the way into the sunset, apparently, and add, different factions and add 20 different people to it. And,
Yeah.
It just lost its meaning.
Well, what they
after
were
you add
supposed
so
to
many
do was
people.
split the roster. That's why they were, they
Yeah.
still had plans to NWO one show, WCW another show.
Right. Which, I think once they did, I don't know if this is fact, but I know that when they did the NWO only pay-per-view and they had set it all up for their guys, stacked the deck, obviously for their guys, and you still had, so you had NWO referees and the good guys would still win matches somehow.
Yeah.
It was like, how does that work? If you're going to do that, just have all them win.
Well, because they bury
unless
the
you do something else,
good
but-
guys the whole time anyway.
Right,
So
and-
pay per view, you have to have the good guy win at least once.
Right, but it was just like that was one of the stupid things that they did.
Yeah, an odd way of.
So I think that
doing
they realized, well, yeah, we can't really have just an NWO TV show
it. Yeah.
just based on that. But
So what do you think? Like maybe the first year and a half of it, it was.
I would say so. I remember the Giant when the Giant joined the NWO. I mean, that was just. Even though it was the same thing over and over, he would come out at the end and choke slam everybody,
Yeah.
and there would be everybody laying in the ring and garbage in the ring.
Yeah.
It was just, But then so that didn't last long either though. I think he turned babyface like not too long after that. But I mean, he was like a huge deal as part of the NWO.
Yeah.
For a long time. So the other guys, main guys, the original guys probably got jealous that he was getting over.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, at least a year and a half, 2 years, maybe, probably not 2 years. But then you start throwing in NWO Wolfpack.
Yeah. The LWO.
Break up which I liked the LWO.
Yeah.
But they did.
I got an LWO t-shirt.
I wanted, I was going to get one.
You may have got that for me. I can't remember.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know why I never got one, but yeah. Well, that was they broke those guys up because they thought that it was, cutting into their stuff, or it was getting too popular or whatever. But
that was probably the last time that you're ever gonna see in pro wrestling, like when Hogan turned bad, and then the next weeks and few months after that, people legitimately ticked off.
Oh yeah,
and like throwing stuff in the ring.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah.
I mean that was like the last hurrah for any type of heat like that. Yeah. There hasn't been any since, and nothing nationally. I mean, I'm sure there might be something locally or whatever, but yeah.
So anyway, that was my number 5.
Yeah, very deserving. I didn't think of that. I didn't even think of that feud, and that was probably one because I'm like writing these down, going, I bet you Mad Dog's gonna bring some up, and I'm going to be like, I should have been on my list. I didn't even think about it.
Well, I mean, originally I was trying to think of just one-on-one people, but that was such a huge thing at the time.
And it was.
I had to add that.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about it. Huh.
So what was your number 5?
You're going to like this one. Number 5. Buddy Rose and Doug Summers with Sherry Martel versus the Midnight Rockers.
Yeah.
And that was in the AWA 1986. I mean, every match that they had, and it wasn't just the matches. I'm not just like a match guy. I like the build up and everything going into it. It was all great.
Yeah.
Like one match led to the next match, led into another. There was always like a little something or something pulled back. It all made sense, like the whole feud. And it went like, I don't know, like 8 months maybe.
Probably.
Maybe a year.
Yeah.
But they would show these, like, it was so good. Like, they would show part of a match from, like, somewhere in Omaha and this is the AWA that was on ESPN. Mm-hmm. That you would never see anything from there. And they would have, like, they would do, like, a TV show from there. And that match would be on it, and there'd be, like, people all over the place. It was, like, Showboat, Las Vegas. I mean, they had... The ones that you could see, they were all great.
Yeah.
And the Janetti bleeding buckets, they all bled. And it was not just the gore thing, like bleeding, but it was like done so well, and it just put them in such jeopardy.
Yes.
And Rose and Summers were just so good.
They were.
And they led that. You could tell they were leading that. They were leading where everything was going. Not that the other two didn't know what they're doing, but at the time they didn't know as much as they would know later. But
no.
Man, that one of the best tag team feuds I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, see, this is one that I didn't even think about when I was putting this on there. Honestly, I was thinking more about the Midnight Rockers and Bad Company.
Me too.
But I didn't even think about this one, but you're totally right. Yeah, just every match that they had, the heat that they had, and again, I mean, almost like the Bulldog Heart Foundation thing, what everybody else was doing in AWA at the time, this was just, these guys were probably
great comparison.
These guys were probably having the best matches on those cards.
Because AWA, their style, it was like a upper Midwest style was it was better than the WWF style, but it was similar.
Yeah.
And then you had, all of a sudden these guys come in and they're like flying around and doing all this stuff. But it wasn't, not that Summers and Rose were flying around, but
they weren't flying around, but they were like a perfect contrast to what the Midnight Rockers were doing. I mean, just two old school guys that were kind of from the school of everything that you did, the heat, but as far as in the ring goes, every little thing that you did counted.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
no matter what.
Yeah.
It was just like whatever little move it is, you made it count.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where those guys were coming from. So it was just like a perfect clash of styles.
Yeah. That was great. I'd like to have like I'm sure I could just go out and find it. I probably have most of it like in my collection, but just like you know what? I have a videotape of that now that I'm talking about it. Like the Bad Company. Lost my train of thought. Midnight Rockers and Rose and Summers. I have a VHS tape with a bunch of that stuff on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ordered it from like High Spots or something a long time ago. I can't remember.
Yeah. So like AWA at the time, like they were still trying to push some of their older guys and taking nothing away from some of them, but they'd kind of bring in older guys. Vern was always wanting to make a comeback. They're still trying to figure out a way to push Greg.
Yeah.
But the tag team scene always seemed like it rose above.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even, you go from there and then you got Lawler and Dundee in there as tag team champions a couple times. And then before that, I think it had to be before that, the Bad Company and Midnight Rocker feud. But
Midnight Express.
Oh, right.
The original Midnight Express.
Yeah, so that's what, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Lawler and Dundee were feuding with the original Midnight Express before they jumped to NWA to feud with the other Midnight Express. But yeah, like the tag team scene in AWA, regardless of anything else that was going on there, always seemed pretty hot.
Yeah, we always talked about that at the time too,
Yeah, I mean, you had the Nasty Boys come through there.
Yeah, they had sweet matches in there too. Like good feuds,
Yeah, exactly. That was always like the high point of their shows. Like, a lot of times.
Yeah, unless Winkle was in there.
Winkle or Jam and Mitch Snow.
Well, even like Derek Dukes and Ricky Rice, like when they put them together as a team.
Yeah, those guys
they
were
like pretty good.
Yeah, I mean they
were working with veterans too, which made them look a little better. But they were a team.
You're right, and they were trying to recreate the Midnight Rockers in a sense at that point.
Yeah,
but still, yeah, those guys were a good team. JT Southern and DJ Peterson.
Yeah,
they were another great team.
Yeah, that's right. Give him the thumbs, Mitch. All right, so that was my number 5.
Yeah, good pick. I didn't even think about that one. Okay, my number 4. Kind of playing off my number 5 because the NWO, like I said, we were saying that WCW going head to head with Raw wouldn't last. It lasted longer, but this is what kind of made it start changing the tide, and that is the Vince McMahon Stone Cold Steve Austin feud.
I thought you were going to say something else. I didn't even think of Stone Cold and McMahon, honestly.
Okay.
And I don't know how I couldn't have, but I should have,
I mean, I would definitely say for me, it got me to switch from WCW because I was pretty much a hardcore WCW guy at that time because I would try to switch it over to WWF at the time, and it just seemed like it was moving in slow motion. You still had the Godwins as like tag team champions and stuff, and it was just like, oh, come on. You had the gang warfare stuff, and it was just, I don't know. It just looked like a cluster when you would like switch it over compared to what was going on as far as the in-ring work for the most part, the undercard in-ring work in WCW anyway. So when this happened, you had to watch it.
Yeah,
especially guys like us who had kind of like a love-hate relationship with Vince McMahon.
And we had a radio show to do, so.
Well, yeah, that too. But the love-hate relationship that we have had for Vince McMahon leading up to that point, finally seeing Vince McMahon become honestly one of the greatest heels of all time.
Yeah.
And actually seeing him try to wrestle. I remember like that first match when he was the referee and then he ends up clotheslining Austin at the end. And it was the most awkward looking clothesline ever.
Yeah, I can picture it right now.
But still, just because it was Vince finally doing that, it was like, oh my God, this is like good stuff. And then, and then they went on to have good matches. I mean, Vince is awkward and he's definitely not a technical wizard. And it looked like he had really not picked up a whole lot, but he was able to do he took a good ass beating.
Yeah, he took one with Flair too.
Great ass beat. Oh yeah, he did. Well, that kind of became his signature. He took one from Bret Hart.
Yeah.
He took one from Flair. Yeah, he took one from a lot of guys after that. But that original cage match with Austin, when he flies off through the table, he's bleeding all over the place. I mean, and that was the debut of Big Show also, which kind of fizzled out quickly because I think he like loses to Austin the next day on Raw. Yeah. But anyway, but regardless of that, just what they were able to get out of that feud. I mean, it just started turning the tide.
Yeah, who would ever thought of it? I mean, he was a heel. McMahon was a heel in Memphis first, and that's where he started to learn how to do it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
but it still went to a whole new level.
Yeah, it did. Oh yeah, I can't believe I didn't even think of it. I mean, that lasted for how many years?
Well, quite a few years, and then they did the thing where like Austin joined him.
Yeah.
Later, which
killed him.
Was kind of a bomb.
Didn't kill him.
But that definitely killed that angle.
Yeah.
And I think that could have kept going.
It could have. It was almost like they shot one angle and milked it for just like the other big territories used to do.
Yeah.
You shoot that one angle and you milk it for 4 or 5 years. And you have all the offshoots, like Undertaker was the corporate ministry or whatever, and they had all the acolytes and they were all corporate and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That was huge.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's one of. Yeah. I mean, it's just one that's got to be there.
Yeah. It has to.
The heat and
on somebody's list anyway.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good one.
So what do you have for your number 4?
Tully Blanchard versus Magnum TA. And this one went for a while. I was looking at the Dusty and Tully Blanchard. That was on my list for a while. But Magnum TA, the next it in wrestling before October 86, and he got in the car wreck. But Tully Blanchard, one of the best heels ever. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like a Jerry. He's better than Jerry Lawler as a heel, I think.
Yeah.
And Magnum TA, just the matches that they had, because I thought of Magnum and Nikita, the best of 7 and that whole deal.
Yeah.
But the culmination of that Tully Blanchard Magnum TA feud, that I Quit match in the cage at Starrcade 85, was the best I Quit match I've ever seen. One of the best cage matches too, just because it was like, it was supposed to be brutal and violent, and it looked like it was real.
Yeah.
They did such a good job with it.
Yes. It did not make my list. I had it as an honorable mention, and I had Nikita and Magnum as an honorable mention too, but I couldn't put it in my top 10. Just because, I mean, I liked it, but I was not a huge Magnum fan.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back now, I'm probably more of a fan of his than I was. But there was just, I don't know what it was about him. I was not a huge fan of his.
I can see where you're coming from. I was a fan, but he wasn't like my, a top guy.
Yeah.
It was just because he was like almost shoved down your throat. You kind of you kind of didn't like get it at the time, like they do in WWF later or WWE now or WCW.
Yeah.
But it appeared that way. Everything was short. You never really saw him do anything, getting any real jeopardy.
That was part of it too. I mean, because at the time of the actual real jobber prelim matches, if he was on WCW Saturday Night, he'd win his match in 3 seconds.
Yeah,
and so I think that probably had something to do with it.
In his match against Kamala at the Great American Bash, that was only like a minute 13 seconds long or something and maybe even less.
No, it was longer than that.
4 tops. I mean, it was.
I thought they just clipped it when they put it out on video.
Maybe they did, but I just remember that being like so short.
Oh, maybe it was. I don't remember, but I mean, for some reason,
because he was doing the belly to belly, and he was,
But that was after. That was after the match, though. He gave him the belly to belly after the match. They changed it.
Oh, you're right.
Remember, because Kamala told Dusty he was not going to lose to the belly to belly, so it was like a DQ or something.
Yeah.
And then Magnum hit the belly to belly after. But then when they put it out on video, they made it look like
you're
Magnum
right.
won with the belly to belly.
But it was
Which is
short
not
anyway.
big.
It wasn't like,
Right.
and it was just kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But man, like Magnum TA Tully Blanchard, how much better can you be than Tully Blanchard as a heel in a big money? I mean, that could have been the main event, and it really was.
I mean, that's one of the greatest blow-off matches of all time. It's one of the greatest cage matches of all time. But personally, I just couldn't put it on my list only because I was not a huge Magnum fan. But yeah, but definitely that match and that feud, it deserves to be there.
Heck yeah, and it's still in infamy.
It is.
It still lives in infamy.
It is,
and and they put that match on like every like WCW, Jim Crockett Promotions tape that they ever like made.
Side little trivia here. I believe that was the very first Mad Dogs Matt Classic match that I showed on the Jobber Hour.
Really?
I think so.
Huh.
Yeah.
That kind of sounds about right.
Because, at the time it was like, obviously I was still trying to show some of the old stuff, some of the good old stuff. And I wanted to get across that even though ECW was doing all that stuff, there was still, I wanted to show that to just show the brutality of it and the realism of it.
Yeah, that was great.
So,
great stuff.
All right, my number 3 is, and I went around with this one, and I'll explain later. But my number 3 is the Midnight Express against the Fantasticks.
I knew you were gonna have that one on there. When I was doing mine, I'm like, for sure that one's on his.
So this was like the version of, and I like both versions of the Midnight Express, but I didn't appreciate the Condrey version until later.
Yeah.
But I right off the bat appreciated or liked the Stan Lane, Bobby Eaton version of the Midnight Express.
Yeah, they were great, weren't they?
So yes, but so obviously the Fantastics come in to kind of take the Rock and Roll Express's place. So really, this version of the Midnight Express feuded more with the Fantastics than they did the Rock and Rolls.
Yeah,
if you think about it.
Yeah, really.
So I became a Fantastics fan watching them in UWF, and they didn't feuding with the Sheepherders, and that was one of the bloodiest feuds.
Honorable
to this
mention.
Day, see, I totally forgot about it till just now, but that was one of the bloodiest feuds ever, which is funny because the Sheepherders went on to become one of the arguably one of the greatest comedy acts of all time in the Bushwhackers in WWF.
Yeah, can you believe
that?
And
the Fantastics go on to wrestle the Midnight Express. They were married to each other.
Yeah.
I will say this, not a big fan of scaffold matches, but we did see probably one of the best scaffold matches I've ever seen was live at the Great American Bash Tour, Kovo 88. And
I think it was 88.
It was the Fantastics against Midnight Express. Easily the best scaffold match
you're
I've
right.
ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that feud, they trade the belt, the U.S. belts back and forth a couple times.
Isn't that something? They were only fighting for the U.S. belt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no. And probably still to this day, my favorite match of all time. I mean, I had to think about it, but off the top of my head, probably my favorite match of all time, Midnight Express versus Fantastics from Clash of the Champions 1.
You remember us talking about that after it happened? We're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Because I just watched...
Excuse my French.
I just watched Jim Cornette review that match, watching it live.
Oh, really?
So there's some good insight. If you haven't seen that, check it out.
Huh.
It's
I try not to listen to Cornette much anymore.
Well, just all he talks about is the match. Just check it out.
Cool. I will. Yeah, that would be cool. The Fantastics were great.
Yeah.
I mean, they were. You could say they were every bit as good as the Midnight Express. Really?
I would say so, or the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah.
But they were different.
Yeah.
They were different enough from the Rock and Rolls.
Yeah. Or like the Nightmares, like they just had so many. Like the Fantastics probably could have. They could have been. And I don't think it has as much to do with like the Rock and Roll Express as, legend has it why they didn't get like the big rub. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the personality that Ricky Morton had. They
Right.
couldn't sell like.
Right.
And this isn't a knock because you're talking about like one of the greatest sellers.
One of the greatest talkers.
Yeah.
Too, really.
But they just didn't have that bling or
Right.
whatever it was. But
Right. As far as in the ring went,
Right.
yes. But
Even-
but the other stuff. No.
yeah.
Right.
But you could put those guys like, okay, your main event this week. They probably would have been like, I don't know if better off, but like just working the Southern promotions where you could have those guys in a main event, say, we need you in main event this week. They could have done it anywhere. WWF, any of the NWA territories. We need you main event. We need you to work a mid card. We need you to work like an opening, and they could do it.
Yeah.
And they could do it better than anybody, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. That was, what a feud that was.
So what's your number 3?
Number 3, Jerry the King Lawler versus Nick Bockwinkel.
Okay.
I've been able to see these like go back, they're just like 5 or 6 matches out there.
Okay.
And they were just all, I don't know anybody better than these two. I mean, like in singles,
Yeah.
they would have matches where every time, and they would come out more like the realism of it. We were talking about Funk earlier. Like Bockwinkel would say, Jerry Lawler, you can't wrestle worth a lick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Nick Bockwinkel. I'm the greatest wrestler on the planet. I've done this, I've done that. Lawler would come out and say, well, you're right. I can't wrestle as good as you, but I can punch the crap out of you.
Right.
So they would go off and they'd have these matches, and Lawler would get screwed going for the AWA world title. They come back out, the next time Bockwinkel's in town, say, I'm tired of you cheating. We're going to have like a no punching match. And then Lawler would punch. And then they have another match. Say, okay, every time Lawler, you punch me, this is the bad guy telling the good guy.
Yeah.
Every time you punch me, it cost you $500. And then
Right.
Lawler would come out on TV and go, well, I figured I'd need, if I threw 23 punches or whatever the number was, that would cost me 12 grand or whatever the case may be. And that's worth it to get the world title, and then
Right.
they would go out and have another match.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were awesome. Those matches were just sweet. I saw one with Nick Bockwinkel as the good guy when Lawler was a heel in Memphis. I think I texted you on that, didn't I?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bockwinkel made like a good guy comeback.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that before.
Right.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not that familiar with these matches. I know that I've seen some, but just 2 all-time greats there.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Bockwinkel definitely does not get the credit that he deserves as a heel or just as a wrestler in general. I mean, he should be, he's depending on what day you ask me, he's definitely in my top 10.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably always in my top 10, no matter what day you ask me. Now that I think about it, but he's another guy that I didn't appreciate till after. He going back to what I was saying about AWA. He was one of those guys that I was like, why are they pushing this old guy?
Yeah.
Until I really kind of understood it more.
Yeah, you understand
Later-
like how things
later
work.
on. Yeah.
Like how the matches work.
Yeah, a little
and
bit later. Yeah.
Who,
Oh,
yeah.
well, definitely like his feud with Hennig.
Oh, gosh.
Then I was kind of like, oh man, this guy's still awesome.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that was the tail end of his career.
And the one with Zabisco, that was on my
Oh, and
honorable
Zabisco,
mention.
too. You're right.
And that was
I
like a
almost put that
legit
on there, too.
long feud with the
Right.
nunchucks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was great, man.
Yeah.
Both of those guys.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so that was my number 3. And that went from 1979 through 84.
Okay.
1984. And there's a lot of promotional intrigue in there and
Yeah.
how Bockwinkel gets there as opposed to the NWA world champion.
Right.
And yeah, just great stuff. Lawler winds up beating Bockwinkel finally for the world title in 88.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when it was, right?
Um,
Or not Bockwinkel, he beat Hennig
No, he beat
for the
Hennig.
title in
Right.
88.
Hennig beat Bockwinkel.
Yeah.
With shady meetings.
Yeah, and that was a great feud too.
Yeah, that was.
Man.
That was. All right, we're running a little low, so
Okay.
so I'll just get right to my number 2. 2 of my all-time favorites also. And this feud just spanned the globe. It spanned just about every promotion, and the crowd was into it no matter where, and it is Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher.
Honorable mention on mine.
Just like I said, buckets of blood spilled. 2 guys, most of the time you wouldn't see, like if Abdullah got brought in somewhere, they pushed him as the monster heel.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they pushed him. So Brody was kind of like his foil through Puerto Rico, through Japan, through Texas, through Canada. I mean, just whenever these guys would wrestle each other, it was just
That was like the big event. Feud in the area. Yeah.
Right. It was an attraction.
Yeah.
And never over any belts or anything. Just throw them out there like, and like I said, going back to what I was saying, Tanaka and Awesome somewhat reminded me of that feud just because that's because those two just wrestle each other for the most part. And ECW did that a couple times. They did that with Tajiri and Super Crazy too. In the beginning, it was like those matches were just always against each other. Abdullah and Brody, like a lot of times, that's just what it was. You just have Abdullah and Brody on your card. And,
yeah. And I will say for that, like you had to, like every time, because we got to a point where we started to be able to see a bunch of different areas, and then they had the pro wrestling this week, but you would hear Abdullah's coming, or Brody's coming.
Right.
You'd watch like World Class and they'd have Abdullah versus Brody.
Yeah.
They might have like a couple matches there and then you'd get to see it like on some other one of the smaller promotions, maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling this week was huge for that.
Yeah.
We'd get to see him in Puerto Rico. And,
yeah.
And they didn't show a whole lot from Japan, but
yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, that is my number 2. What do you got?
My number 2, Rock and Roll Express versus Midnight Express. And that was your
that's my number 1.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just throw that out there right now.
Okay. So I was wondering where we were gonna butt heads on that one.
I will say this: I went back and forth with the Fantasticks and Rock and Rolls, though.
I'll bet you did.
Yeah. But ultimately, I had to go with this one because it. I mean, hell, it was still going until a couple years ago.
Yeah. That started in Mid-South.
And they were still having good matches.
Yeah, that started in 1984 in Mid-South.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Or end of 83.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like we talked about before, the Midnight Express with the Condrey version, they got more heat than any other team that I can ever remember. Except for like maybe like Condrey and Dr. D down in like Continent or Southeastern or something. But just in those matches, they were all like so good. They were able to get the crowd into it. Like the women and the girls would just scream and go nuts for the Rock and Roll Express getting their butt kicked. And they headlined like so many different shows. They sold out buildings that Dusty and Flair couldn't sell out.
Yeah.
And every weekend you had like I remember when Crockett bought the time slot on TBS and it was almost, it was like, I found out later it was like the same thing. They pushed like the Midnight Express on that show. They did like everything. They just boom, boom. They had singles matches, tag team matches. Nobody beat them. They just destroyed everybody.
Right.
And those matches, they were so good. The feuds were so good. The announcers were great on it. The crowd was just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just.
That feud went for 30 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, obviously I have that as my number 1. Just whenever they would have those matches, that's, you knew that was going to be, again, pretty much the best match on the show.
Yeah, and you would always look forward to those matches.
Exactly.
And that's kind of how I did my list. Like, there were some I'd be like, but I didn't really look forward to it as much as this.
Okay.
So I would put this on there and leave another one off.
Right.
Yeah,
so it didn't matter how many times we'd seen them, see them against each other, because pretty much for a long time, that's who they wrestled. You know? It wouldn't always be, you wouldn't always see that caliber because it was still the jobber era.
Yeah.
But either way, when you would see those matches, it didn't matter. It was just
Stan Lane came in. It didn't matter.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Huh.
Exactly. Big Bubba.
Yeah. that was another thing that just added another layer to that feud,
Right. So, yeah. So my number 1 is that. So what is your number
1? What was your number 2?
I already said it. It was Brody and Abdullah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, duh. All right, my number 1, Jerry the King Lawler versus Superstar Bill Dundee.
Okay. I figured you would have that on there. And I've seen some of it, but I really didn't see enough of it to put it on my list.
Yeah, it was hard between 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Like plays, because I immediately thought Rock and Roll Express, Midnight's number one, and I'm like, wait a minute, man.
Yeah.
But those matches, and they culminated, like their feud, it's still going today.
Yeah.
But they had like a series of loser leave town matches that were the best, specifically the first two, and you can go find them on the internet. They are incredible. Like two guys that just punch. I mean, they work snug. They beat the crap out of each other, but just phenomenal. The crowd was hot. All the interviews, Lawler, one of the best promo guys ever, one of the best in the ring. Dundee, no slouch himself.
Right.
Just a great feud that started in 1977 through today.
Went on for right.
Yeah,
exactly.
And for my money, like I said, the best two loser leave town matches ever.
Yeah,
were those great, and both of them were so good, and other feuds too. It's not like it was just something magical between these guys. They were the best.
Yeah,
and that was the number one selling feud in CWA Memphis history. So
even bigger. And so this is one that I forgot about, but talking about Lawler, even bigger than the Andy Kaufman Jerry Lawler feud.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that gets so much ink because it was a Hollywood guy in there, like a pop culture.
Yeah.
It was successful, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like Lawler Fargo, Lawler Dundee.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there because that deserves at least an honorable mention just because.
Oh, yeah. It went all the way to the freaking David Letterman
show. Right.
And they thought it was real forever.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, like I said, I didn't see enough of the Lawler Dundee feud, but yeah, I could totally see why you have it on there. And,
even if you just watch the interviews and the matches, I mean that's enough.
So again, if people aren't familiar with that, check those out. So that pretty much brings us to the end. I did have a lot of honorable mentions, but we're not.
Give me a local one. Do you have a local one?
A local one?
Yeah,
I do not have a local one.
Chris Carter and Muhammad Jihad.
I'm sorry. Okay, that's good. I do have a local one. The Sheik and Bobo Brazil.
Yes.
but other than that, thank you, Brace Beemer, for making your comeback.
Yeah.
And it feels good to be back.
It is great to be back. Nice job, Mad Dog.
Oh,
fantastic!
No, I couldn't do it without you.
I was worried I was going to be a little nervous, but I don't know. Must have been the caffeine and just kind of running the mouth.
It's like riding a bike.
Yep.
So everybody, as always,
and thanks to Rich Rollins, Sean Sisk, that have joined online.
Andy Treyork was there for a while.
Okay, great.
Thanks for everybody tuning in.
Sweet tree.
Keep checking the Butch Blood page for future shows, and we will see everyone next time. And
enjoy yourself, everyone.
Yeah.